Hey, thanks again for joining us for another episode of Triple Play. We're excited that you guys keep popping in and checking us out. And don't forget to support those that support us. We got Andy McCollum and Resource One at 636-458-1798. We got Chris at CS Design at 573-436-3717. They do the intro, outro, the website. If you haven't visited, we got some great merch. You'll see I got a little bit of on today. And not only do we have merch, we got signed balls. We got all the places that you can see our podcast, because I keep getting asked a lot, is YouTube the only place we can see it? And the answer to that question is no. We're on Spotify, we're on Amazon, we're on Google, we're on Apple Podcasts, Podcastity. I think there's like 32 places you can see us on. So don't forget to check us out. Make sure you're liking, make sure you're subscribing, and make sure you're sharing. The more you guys share it, the more the word gets out. We've noticed this trend, Shawn, as people will check out our videos. We'll put one out and it'll get like 12 views in the first week, and then somehow it'll hit a group. Somebody will share it. One of you guys are listening to it, you'll share it. It'll hit a sect of people that like it, whether it be the creation one we did with Helmet not so long ago, and it'll get out to some creation societies and people who are maybe debating some of that stuff, and all of a sudden those episodes seem to blow up. I'll look down a few weeks later and see that we've got 200, 300, 1,000 viewers. I think our latest one was the presidential one. I put it out on July 4th. Nobody really watched it a whole lot for the first 3 or 4 days. And then in the past, this week, basically, it's gone to over 3,000 hits. So, man, we appreciate that. So make sure you guys are sharing. Lastly, if you are somebody who wants to support us, we've got ways to do that. If you go to the show notes in there, there's a support button. You can hit that and you can help support us for $3, $5, $8, or $10. If you're a YouTube member and want to become a member through YouTube, we have those memberships all the way up from, I believe it's a couple of dollars or $3, something like that, all the way up to $20. You can read the membership levels on there. Some of those give you some really cool exclusive stuff for the high end. But for everybody, we'll give you a shout out. And we're going to give you guys an opportunity to be interviewed if you want by Scott and I. So we'll be setting those up with the people who are supporting us, but we super appreciate that. That's helps us out as we're continuing to grow this and facilitate this. So thanks again. Today, if I had Scott here, he'd say, who we got? Well, who we got today? We got Shawn Key. Shawn Key is a good friend of mine. We've gone to college, known each other for over 20 years now. So that small group together, church life together. And has an awesome story. I'm excited for you guys to hear where God has taken him and where he's at now. So with that said, Shawn, give us a little bit about you. The St. Louis questions, where'd you go to high school? But tell us a little bit about where you grew up, your family life, and a little bit of your testimony. How did you come to know Christ?
Well, I grew up in North County. I usually say Florissant, but we weren't fancy enough to actually live in Florissant. We were in unincorporated North St. Louis County. I went to Hazelwood Central, class of 1988. So yes, I am old. We had a good life. Grew up listening and going to Cardinals baseball. Just doing all the St. Louis things. This is my home, will always be my home, no matter where I am in the world, and I love it. I grew up going to church. We were there every week, Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. Anytime there was a potluck dinner, we were there, learning all about God, learning the gospel, learning the Bible. I don't know if I completely understood it until I became a dad, but that's my 12-second story.
All right. And then how did you kind of come to know Christ? You said that, you kind of fully understood it as a dad. Did you receive Christ at a time? Was it a process or, what was that like? So
I think in looking back, I think I genuinely was quote unquote saved and became a believer really early. I was only maybe 5 years old, but from there begins this process of, the fancy word we use is sanctification, where God starts changing you from who you think you want to be to who God made you to be. And just a lot of things in life have sometimes nice and gently, and sometimes God has had to, push me off a cliff, doing the God and Shawn trust fall kind of thing to help me see who he is and what he's doing and what he's done and continues to do. So,
okay. And then you now fast forward a little bit. You're now in Bulgaria, but there's a part in there where you meet this incredible woman that kind of leads to that. So tell us a little bit about meeting your wife and your family, and then how that translated to where you're at today.
Yeah, so I've done student ministry for most of my adult life, and as part of that, I was working in Illinois, helping direct camps and statewide student events. And one of those was a camp where one of the things that we did was help prepare teams of mostly college students, some a little bit older, who were traveling all over the world to places like Peru and Russia and Cuba, Brazil, France, and Bulgaria. And I'm sure there were some other ones in there too, but Natalie was one of those people who was going to Bulgaria, and that's how we originally met. She was at the camp for a few years and was very shy. So as a director, I would walk around and introduce myself to people, and she was one who would say hi and then run off. But a few years in, this would have been 2005, I think, we started actually talking and getting to know each other, and pretty quickly knew that God was bringing us together and that we were going to end up married. And, we kind of went from there. Do you have questions up to that point? Because this is where it gets crazy.
No. I was just trying to get to understand so that people can listen and kind of hear your story. I think it was interesting how you guys met at the camp, and I knew a little bit about it. I knew, obviously, you went to Mobile. Was your degree in religious education? I can't remember. I know you took some of the classes.
No, I've never been a school person. I was always pretty smart, but when I was growing up, they didn't have gifted programs and things like that where we were at. And so I was smart and really bored and got in trouble in school and had a pretty solid C average. And then, when it was time for college, all of my friends who had watched me skipping class and not turning in homework and things like that, I took the ACT and got a high enough score that I got a pretty good scholarship and ended up going to what at that time was Missouri Baptist College, is now Missouri Baptist University, and ended up kind of doing the same thing there. I remember I was so excited about my first day of college because this was going to be different than high school. This was, I would get to choose my classes and do what I wanted to do. And then when I registered, my first class started at 7:30 in the morning. I'm not a morning person, never have been, never will be. I'm sorry for all of you morning people. And Natalie is a morning person, and
my wife is too. I'm definitely not. I'm the opposite.
I'm always like, but the sunrise is so beautiful. And I'm like, so is the sunset. It looks exactly the same. You just face the other direction. Sunsets are beautiful. So 7:30 in the morning, and I remember I got there and I sat down, and it was about a 30-minute drive for me to get there. Sat down in the class, and the instructor walked in and stood in front of the class and said, "Good morning, class. Welcome to Introduction to Computer Information Systems." And I was out. The next thing I knew, someone was shaking me saying, "Come on, man, it's over." And that was kind of the beginning of a long college career.
But you did start a historic group there.
Well, yeah, it was at the time, it was a very small place. Wasn't a whole lot going on campus. When you get a few guys who are bored and creative, then, things happen. And we ended up, this kind of started with, I went for one semester and then I took a semester off and then I came back. So technically I was a freshman, and that was when I became the president of the sophomore class while I was still a freshman.
There you go.
And then we, just a quick version, homecoming was coming up and they wanted us to nominate someone to be the homecoming queen. And we didn't know anyone. We didn't have a name, but we had to turn something in. So we just made up a name and wrote it down and turned it in. And her name was Lindsay Brooks. And we turned it in, and a day or two later, my friend Greg came up to me and said, "Hey, did you see this?" And it was a sheet with the names of all the homecoming queen candidates, and Lindsay Brooks was on there. And we were like, well, okay, let's just see what happens. And no one said anything. No one said, why is this name on here? We got to take this off. And no one really did anything about it. I'm not even sure what the purpose was of homecoming at that point, but there was no excitement about it. There was nothing going on. So we said, let's make it exciting. So I started making flyers and hanging them up and telling everyone, vote for Lindsay, vote for Lindsay. And we got people talking, and people would walk up and say, how come I never see Lindsay? And we'd say, she was just right here. You totally just missed her. And this went on. And then the day before they were going to vote for homecoming queen, the president of the Student Government Association turned us in. And so her name got taken off all of the ballots. And at that time, everything was done with typewriters and then Xeroxed. So they had to physically go in and cross her name off all the ballots.
Oh, that's funny.
And then people came up to us and said, well, what happened? What happened to Lindsay? Why isn't she on there? And I kind of froze, and Greg just blurts out, she died. And so it kind of grew into this legend. And then we started doing some other things just to generate spirit. And we called ourselves Sigma Apple Pie.
I love Sigma Apple Pie.
And yep, it's we had a lot of fun.
Yes, I agree. I loved Mobab. It was a lot of fun. A lot of good people, a lot of good memories. Class was class, and you learned some in some classes and you didn't in others, but I think that's in general,
Well, you learn a lot of information, but I always tell people I learned as much or more outside of the classroom as I did in the classroom, because you learn about people, you learn how to talk to people and how to have interpersonal relationships, and you learn a lot about leadership, both good and bad. And if you're really paying attention, that'll take you some places. Over the course of my 5 years or so there, I probably changed my major 6 times. I ended up with a degree in psychology.
Oh, there you go. And so now you're doing mission. So why don't we'll fast forward now back to your bride, and we'll get into, you guys get married and where that goes. So, all
right. So I went through, a list of some of those countries, and most of those people will recognize pretty easily: Russia and Cuba and Peru. Probably not a lot of people know about Bulgaria. In our school system, we didn't focus a whole lot on Eastern European countries, and especially the small ones, but Natalie was going to Bulgaria. And when we knew that we were going to be getting married, she said to me, you need to know that God has told me 100% that I'm going to serve long-term in Bulgaria. And that probably means living there. And I looked back and I said, well, I know 100% that God hasn't called me to go anywhere outside of the United States, probably not even outside of St. Louis. And so we had some conversations about that. a lot of conversations about that. And eventually I said, look, I will go one time and we'll see what God does. And in my head, that meant we'll give God a chance to fix you so that we're going to live in St. Louis. So my first trip to Bulgaria was in the summer of 2006. And that trip ended about 2 weeks before our wedding. And Natalie had left before the rest of the team that I was on so that she could go visit some people and also get some things in place for the team. So I got in a van with, I think, 17 other people here in St. Louis, and we took the van up to Chicago to fly out of Chicago. And I was miserable that whole trip, just wrestling with God, saying, what are you doing? I couldn't afford to be on that trip and didn't know why I was going or what was happening. So I was miserable all the way to Chicago. Once we got on the plane, I was miserable flying across the Atlantic. I still remember looking out the window over Europe and knowing that we were over Europe and thinking, wow, this is crazy. And then we landed in Bulgaria and I was miserable. And going through the airport, I was miserable. Picked up our suitcases. I was miserable. Just saying, God, what are you doing? God, do you understand what's going on here? What are we supposed to do? I don't know if you realize this, God, but we're supposed to be getting married soon. And this is like a big deal. And just walking through the airport, miserable. Have I mentioned that I was miserable? I can't describe it enough. And then I will never forget getting to the main doors that led out into the lobby of the airport. And they opened up as we got close to them. And on the other side, I could see Natalie. And I've got these suitcases and I walk through that door and I'm miserable. And I'm thinking, how is this conversation going to go? Stepping through that door, God just said, you're home. And it was that fast. And from that point on, we started talking about Bulgaria and I started learning about Bulgaria, history and culture and language and all of the things that you need to know. And the rest, as they say, is history.
Okay. So did you fall in love with the people while you were there?
Oh, absolutely. Beautiful people, very different culture in a lot of ways. So Bulgaria was never officially part of the Soviet Union, but it was very much in their sphere of influence. It was, they will say, a socialist country. Most of us would call it a communist country. They were not free at the end of the day. And
Right.
They were under most of the same rules as the Soviet Union. Could not leave, could not, do a lot of the Western things. You couldn't have blue jeans or listen to certain kinds of music, and just a lot of stuff that we don't. I don't think we really understand living here in the United States. But beautiful people, beautiful country. With mountains and seaside. And if you don't know where Bulgaria is, if you go to a map and find Greece, we're right above it, right to the north. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful place, but still trying to get through not just 45 years of communism. Prior to that, they were free for a few golden decades, and then before that, for 500 years, they were under the rule of the Ottoman Empire. So they've had their struggles over the years and still working through a lot of those things.
So would you say the people are, I've heard different things about Bulgaria, so maybe you can bring some clarity, but do you think the people, I've been told that it's kind of more when you're there, you feel like you're in America, like in the 50s, where it's just much more relaxed, much more. I mean, they have modern things, but it's just not as modernized as a lot of places. It's still very community driven, very conservative, value driven. So.
Yeah, and a lot of it depends on where you are. We live in Sofia, which is the capital. And, Bulgaria since 2007 has been part of the European Union, so a lot of modernization has happened.
Okay.
And it's a lot more cosmopolitan now than it was prior to that. So, there's people from all over the world living in Sofia, and we have a lot of really nice modern stuff.
Okay.
And at first glance, it looks like any other city you'd go to, but the culture is very, very old. Parts of it are ancient. When Paul was writing his letters in the New Testament, people were already living and thriving in what's now Sofia for a very long time. So there's a lot of old culture. There's culture that came with the Ottomans. There's culture that came through communism. And sometimes it's hard to kind of wade your way through that. There's just different ways of doing things. In some ways, it is more relaxed. It's got more of a European feel to it. We're not quite to the point of, places like France and Italy where they shut down the whole country in the afternoon so everyone can take a nap. I would be all for that. But it is just a different feel.
So when did you guys officially go over there? And was it just the two of you guys?
So we started, after that first trip in 2006, we started figuring out what we were going to do next. And I told you I worked in student ministry. And so we said, I have an older son who, when we got married, was 10 years old. And I said, no matter what, I can't move somewhere else until he's at least out of high school. And Natalie understood that. I said, but we'll go back every year. And so we wanted to start figuring out how we do that. The denomination that we were part of was not going to continue sending teams like the one that I first went on. So we basically created our own program to take high school students with us and not just bring them on a trip, but to do some discipleship and some mentoring and some leadership training to help them understand and process what they were seeing. Getting outside of the United States, you really start to realize a lot of the things that we take for granted. And depending on where you go, there's different levels of that. It's different going to Haiti than it is to Europe, but there's still a lot of differences, and you start picking up on those things pretty quickly. So every year from 2007 through 2014, we took teams with us, started doing a lot of things, meeting a lot of people, developing a lot of relationships. We, way back at the very beginning, started working in orphanages and working with a lot of those kids and the staff. And then in 2015, we said, okay, it's time to go. And pretty quickly, a lot more quickly than a lot of people thought was possible, ended up selling our house, selling or giving away most of our stuff. I quit my job. At the time, I was working at Missouri Baptist University and had been for a good number of years. And last week marked our 8-year anniversary of our first day living in Bulgaria.
Awesome. Me and Amy were talking about that the other night. We were trying to figure out how long you'd been there. I was thinking it was close to 10 years. I wasn't too far off. So,
if we round, it's you can say 10 if you round up.
Yeah, I mean, if it just
remember that from math class.
There you go. Well, I said, I think it's been close to 10 years, I think is what I said. So yeah, I mean, 8 years, I think is fairly close to 10 years. So round up. Absolutely.
Yep.
So, yeah. So what have been some of the things, some of the challenges over there and some of the things, and also you guys didn't just go alone, did you? You guys brought a son. So
Yeah. Our younger son, we adopted when he first moved in with us when he was 3.5. And before we even officially adopted him, he was on a plane with us. So before he was even 4, he was in Bulgaria with us. And he, on several of our trips with teams, came with us. And sometimes he stayed behind with grandma and grandpa. But he was there. He moved with us. He was going into 2nd grade when he moved. So yeah, it's been the 3 of us.
yeah. Okay. And then since you've been there, what have been some of the challenges? What have been some of the things that have been awesome? Tell us some of the stories that have occurred as you guys have done missions there, some of the difficulties and some of the victories.
Yeah, there's little things, just cultural things that it's one thing when you go for a week or 2, you eat out a lot and you don't have to pay rent or pay electric bills or, things like that. And once you move, you got to figure out how to do that. You got to figure out where to shop for groceries, and not just where to shop for groceries, but if you don't have a car, you got to figure out how to get there and how to get those groceries back. And sometimes the answer is you walk or get on a bus and you carry a lot of stuff. So, we had those kinds of things. There were, every year for our first 5 years, we had to go get our visa renewed, which the best way I can describe it to people here is like going to the DMV for 3 months, because it's the same kind of office, people working there who would rather be doing something else. A lot of paperwork, a lot of doing the same paperwork over and over and over again. And it's just a process that none of the foreigners who move there look forward to. But after 5 years, you can apply to become a permanent resident, which then gives you a 5-year visa, which we now have, and has been wonderful to not have to worry about for that much time. You have the issues of raising support. We're not with a big organization. We don't get, we don't have an organization paying us a salary to be there. We're self-supporting. So we have a lot of people, you have done that over the years, and a lot of other people who give a little bit each month just to help us be there and do what we do.
A lot of little bits add up. I mean, we've been learning that with the podcast. So
yeah, and it's a great thing. We tell people this is a really cool ministry, but we are really only a little part of it. We're the ones who are there, but there are so many people literally all over the world who support us through prayer, financially, through giving us ideas. Some have come to visit. Just a lot of different ways and a lot of different people involved in what we do. And we are constantly, every day, grateful for that.
So what's the work like? What are you guys doing as far as missions at this moment? When we say missions, what have you guys been doing there? Is it small groups with folks? Is it teaching, English second language? I mean, missions can be very broad because you're trying to get into a culture and you're trying to build bridges and develop relationships to share Christ, right? So, and how has that played out?
So we do a lot of different things. Our biggest ministry is just living, because it's unusual. People ask us all the time, why are you here? And we tell them we love Bulgaria. And that can take people by surprise, because no matter where you are in the world, you take your own home for granted. You don't realize, there's a lot of really great things about Bulgaria and about the people. And so that helps us start a lot of conversations. We don't pretend like we're coming there to save people with our American or Western culture.
Right.
People appreciate that. There have been Bulgarians in Bulgaria since long before there was the United States, and we're aware of that. There are things that we can do well that we've learned from our country and our culture, and we might use some of those things, but at the end of the day, we're in Bulgaria. We're living as if we were Bulgarian, and that's a big deal. That helps build relationships. That opens doors for us to talk to people who, in a lot of cases, just get annoyed by tourists. And yeah, so that's a big part of it. We have a Bulgarian nonprofit that we started that helps us to go into some of the orphanages. And I say orphanages, we really should probably call them children's homes now.
Okay.
Group homes, but there are a lot of kids living without parents for whatever reason. And we do as much as we can to spend time with those kids. And, we do help financially with some stuff, with helping cover food costs and things like that in some of these homes. But the most important thing we do is just go and spend time with them and let them know that they matter. And, that leads to building relationship, and ideally we'll see those kids grow up and not end up living on the streets or involved in some kind of life of crime, which happens a lot. A lot of those kids do get adopted. Right now, mostly from people outside of Bulgaria. So for American families who are coming to adopt from Bulgaria, we try to make sure they know we're there if they need help with anything, whether, practical stuff like we're here in country and we don't know where to go to get medicine or food or things like that. We can help them with that. We do, sometimes when they come to pick up their kids, we take family photos while they're still in Bulgaria so they can remember that pickup trip. We help them understand cultural stuff, or, a lot of their kids don't speak any English or very little English. So when your newly adopted Bulgarian child is running around to your other kids screaming, die, 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 we can help them understand they're not saying die, they're saying, give me that, give me that. That's
pretty funny.
We've had a couple of times.
Why is a kid running at my other kid saying die? I thought they would love me after adopting them.
Yeah, so we do a lot of that. I've done international Bible study. That changed a little bit during the whole COVID mess where we couldn't meet in person anymore. But, we've had a really good group, and a lot of those people have kind of naturally moved back to their home countries. They come to Bulgaria for different reasons, to go to school or for work, and then end up moving back. But we do still meet up with them from time to time on Zoom, and it's really cool to have people from Italy, Norway, Germany, Switzerland, Scotland, Nigeria, Ukraine, Bulgaria, some country called Texas, just people all over the world, Mexico, all just getting together to talk about the Bible. It's been really cool. We do have done English clubs where we just invite people to come and sit and we speak in English so that they can improve their language skills. And sometimes they help us with our Bulgarian at the same time, or, learn a little bit of whatever language they speak.
Was that hard to learn Bulgarian?
Still happening. It's difficult, but it's fun. And
Can you say something cool in Bulgaria? Do you know anything? That's kind of a fun sentence.
Как го искаш? Аз мога да говоря на български доста добре.
All right.
All I said was, what do you want? I can talk pretty well in Bulgarian.
I love it. That's cool. And you also shared with me your tattoo. Now, what did it say? Because that people might not be able to see that, but that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I've got, it's a cross, and it's got 3 different words on it. One is in English, it says servant. And then it has the old Greek doulos, which means servant. It's the word Paul used when he said, I am a servant of Christ. And then sluga is the Bulgarian word for that.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of cool when you shared that with me. So
helps me remember why I'm there. So when you get frustrated, sometimes it's good just to remember why you're there.
Yeah, that's good. So, and then you also mentioned that you're doing some teaching, right? Did I understand that right yesterday?
Yeah. So one of the other things, I've always been the person who likes to support other people in whatever God's called them to do. And, sometimes when you get into Christian circles, whether it's with churches or even missions, you see people playing these turf war games. And I've always just hated that. And I want to see people succeed in whatever it is God's called them to do. So I like to kind of behind the scenes help people out and do what I can. And because of that, we do have a lot of friends who are in Sofia with different missions organizations, and it's great to hear about what they're doing and what God is doing with them and through them. And there's a pretty good missionary community, and because of that, we have a small, it's really a homeschool co-op. We call it a school called Sofia Christian Academy, where it functions as a school for our kids. So primarily missionary kids, English-speaking missionary kids. And most of them are American. We do have some Korean and Australian kids as well. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun and rewarding to be able to teach there for a few years. And I serve on the board. If you are someone who likes to teach, likes to serve kids and families, we're always looking for someone to come help us with that. So get in touch with me.
Reach out. Yeah, we'll put, just so people know, if you want to help support Chris and you want to, or you want to just reach out and maybe bring a group over to Bulgaria and have a chance to serve alongside Chris in missions over there and have somebody who can set up everything for you. We'll make sure that's all in the show notes that you guys can reach out and be able to do so. One of the things I want to get to, because it's something we've been praying for some time, is the challenges with your wife a little bit, because that's also been something that you guys have had to deal with over there. So,
all right, to be clear, those are health challenges, not just challenges with my wife. Those are 2 different things.
Okay, fair enough. Yes, health challenges. I should have clarified that. So. But yeah, I mean, she got over there, and then there's been a bunch of stuff that's kind of happened. So it's also, I mean, I don't, that's your wife's story. So, but share a little bit about that, because I think people will appreciate hearing that her commitment. To me, that shows her commitment, because most people, when they go overseas and start doing missions, and then they start having health problems, they immediately tuck tail and come back, right? But that's not been everything I read from her. That's not her. When you say she has been called to Bulgaria, you read that in everything she puts out. So,
So Natalie grew up in Chicago. Fortunately, she was a White Sox fan and not a Cubs fan, or our story may have gone very differently. She grew up in Chicago, college athlete, basketball player, volleyball player. She is tall. She's 6'1", very athletic, Hispanic, and has always just been a let's go, let's do this kind of person. And at the same time, when we moved there, she had lupus, and we knew that, and it wasn't a huge deal. You know, she would get sick a little bit more often and sometimes take a little bit longer to get over stuff. No big deal. I'm diabetic, have been since I was 18 months old. So we both have these health things in our background, but they weren't slowing us down, weren't really affecting anything in life very much. And our first several years in Bulgaria, you know, she's out running every day. She's one of those weird people that would go out and run 10 miles just for fun. I don't understand it. Morning people and runners, I don't get it. My personal philosophy has always been I don't run unless I'm being chased. And even then, I've got to be pretty sure that whoever's chasing me can actually do something to me. I just don't think like that. And I understand you love it. And if you're good at it, that's great. I'm all for it. I will sit in a lawn chair and clap as you go by and cheer you on. She is that person. And very active. And then about 4.5 years ago, just started having some very significant health problems, which came from her lupus, but 4.5 years ago, she got an infection that spread through her entire nervous system and into her brain. And she went into the hospital on a Monday, and I found out later, it wasn't until Wednesday that any of the doctors there thought that she would ever leave the hospital. Mm. And when she did come home, she had to relearn how to speak. She couldn't remember a lot of words. She couldn't walk by herself. It was a difficulty just going from one room to the next in our house. So that was really difficult to see, but because of who she is, and I'll tell you, she is the strongest person that I know and always has been. You know, one story I always tell, when we still lived in St. Louis, we were going to a Cardinals game and we're excited to go, and she was walking through our apartment and caught her pinky toe on something and just bent it sideways. I mean, it was snapped in half, broken. And we were supposed to be leaving for the ball game. We still got there by the third inning. That's just the kind of person that she is. So this was a big deal. And then she, after that, worked and got back to where she was running again. She got back to running her full amount. And not too long after that, started getting really sick again. And her autoimmune system is constantly trying to kill her in ways that most of us cannot fathom. And it's affected every system in her body, from her brain to her heart, to her lungs, to her muscles, to her nervous system, to her digestive system. And the way she describes it is it's like having the flu every single minute of every single day. And I think it's probably worse than that. She just doesn't have a good way to describe it in a way that we can understand. And it's just an ongoing thing. And she's had surgeries. She had a tumor in her pituitary gland that she had to have surgery for. And yes, people do sometimes say, why are you still there? And my answer is always, because that's home.
Well, she loves it. I mean, when I read what she puts out, when she talks about it, you underline through all the pain, there's not a hint of, I want to come home. It's I want to love these people through all this pain. God's using this, and I'm going to love these people. And
and she trusts God. She would love to not be sick, but she knows, and we all the time talk about, God's got this all figured out. And we can't sometimes. We're not the first couple to go through serious issues while away from home. you read the entire New Testament and some of the stuff that Paul went through. He kept going, and that's the example that we have, and it's home for her. And they wouldn't do anything differently here. It would just cost a lot more money. She can't actually travel at this point, but they wouldn't do anything different for her in the United States, and it would cost a whole lot more here, and it would break her heart to be away from the place that God has called her to. So she's home, and soon I will be back there with her.
Awesome. And back to ministering to the people of Bulgaria.
Yep.
However that is. God continues to expand that, it seems like. Every time I'm talking to you, it's, hey, we're doing some homeless ministry, we're doing this ministry, and it just seems like God's constantly shifting you around to where the needs are in Bulgaria, and the people have those needs. So that's really, really cool.
Yeah.
So.
And I know you're going to put some links up, but Natalie is a phenomenal photographer and captures the beauty in places that most people just walk right past it. And so hopefully we can share some of that stuff. We do, one of the ways we support ourselves, our tent making thing, is to sell prints of a lot of her stuff. So,
well, she definitely has an eye, no doubt about it. I enjoy when she puts out pictures. So I follow her on several of the social media outlets, and she's so good about that. So. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, is there anything you would want to tell people? I mean, beyond what you've kind of shared about Bulgaria, about the ministry, and anything that we've kind of haven't talked about in our discussion?
No, just I tell people all the time, if you are a Christian, a Christ follower, you automatically get the job title of missionary. It's not an option. It's part of the package. And for some of us, that's the other side of the world. But for everyone, that starts in your own home with your family and then goes to your community, your job. You may go on a short-term trip somewhere in the United States or wherever. But if you're a Christian, you're a missionary. And we all need to be aware of that and just be looking for the opportunities that God has for us to serve. But you are always welcome to come and visit us. We will help you figure out how to do that. And just get in touch.
Awesome. And I'll make a little plug, because I've actually been trying to teach my kids a little bit about communism and socialism and what its life has been like over there. And there is a Christian book set called Ivan. And if you have not heard it, I would highly recommend that you take some time and read them. There's, I believe, 6 or 7 books in the series, and then the author, who it's based on, there's the story of his life, so highly recommend them if you haven't had a chance. I think I'm on book 5 with my kids right now. We've been reading them. They love it, and I like it because they're learning Christian principles, but they're also learning about the lifestyle that was going on by Russia, and it was written by somebody who served in the Russian military during the 60s, 70s, and 80s. So very well written and first-hand account. So even though they're fictional stories. So
you need to share a link to that.
I will. I don't know if they're still in publishing. I had to get them on eBay, but I will try to at least put a picture or something of Ivan's the initial one out there, because they're really good. The one we just got finished was Ivan and the Hidden Bible. They found. Well, I don't want to give it away. There's just a great story behind it, but they're all really, really good. Well, that said, thanks again for listening in, checking out Shawn's story today, and hopefully you were inspired, encouraged, and you are a missionary wherever you're at. That being said, too, don't forget to like and subscribe, share a story. If you have the ability to help support, feel free to grab that link below and support Shawn and his wife, Natalie, and as he said, prayer requests, get in touch. You can do all that. We'll put the links there so you can find out prayer requests. You can be in touch that way. And if you're a pastor or somebody doing ministry and would like to, jump in, go to Bulgaria and experience the life of a Bulgarian for at least a week, maybe a little bit. And on top of that, have a chance to serve with your hands and feet. You can do that as well. Thanks again for checking us out, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye.